Hey everybody, Lee Halverson. This is Kevin Webb.
What's going on?
Decided to do a podcast since there's no football, there's no basketball, there's no baseball, there's no nothing. So we want to do something that's going to entertain you, engage you, hopefully enlighten you, inspire you. And we're just going to go from there. So what's going on, man?
What's up, man? How's it going?
How you been enjoying the quarantine?
It's not too bad. I mean, I'm working from home now, so, I'm getting to have the kids 24/7.
Yeah.
So kick them out in the yard when they get too much. So it's an interesting time that we're in, though. I mean, this is everyone's kind of trying to feel their way through all of the news and all the shutdowns. So it's we're living kind of in a movie right now.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah, we were talking about that last night. It was like that movie Contagion
Yeah.
with Matt Damon. I haven't watched it. I'm scared to watch it.
I actually, man, I made this bucket list of movies, end of the world movies.
Yeah.
A couple weeks ago. I've been going through Contagion. We watched a couple weeks ago. It's very similar to that movie. I mean, with the starting with the bats and everything in China. So that's kind of.
It has the bats in the movie too.
It has the bats. It starts in China. Yeah, I mean, you watch that movie and you're like, oh, that's where we're at right now.
How long were they in quarantine?
Yeah. I mean, it was that virus in that movie was a little more severe. Like,
okay.
You got it and died within like 24 hours. Yeah.
Oh yeah, okay.
Blood coming out of your eyes and stuff. So we're not there yet. Luckily.
Yeah, we ain't there yet.
But I have been looking for zombies in the streets. Like, first week this happened, I was, how every zombie movie opens up with like a zombie just running into a car. Mm-hmm. I pull up to a red light and I'm just waiting, for that zombie to smash into my window.
We haven't had a zombie problem. We have a stupidity problem, though. There's created, or it's highlighted more stupid people that I thought were in this country than ever before.
Yeah, I just think it kind of be similar.
Did you see the guy in New York? He was on the subway and he's licking the one of the handrails, and he got coronavirus.
Rudy Gobert did the same thing, licking the microphone.
It's like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And then the kids that went and coughing in the grocery store. Did you see that one?
No.
They coughed in the grocery store and had to throw away $35,000 worth of produce.
So see, sometimes I think maybe we just let this thing run its course. We might be better off in the end. I know it's not the popular thing to say, but I mean it's wild. Part of that is probably. It's hard to take something like this so serious. In the beginning, especially, you're like, it doesn't seem real. It really seems surreal. And then you're so used to the media sensationalizing every single thing that happens.
Yes.
Like, okay, especially the last 3 years, not to get so political, but there's been all these oh my goodness moments. You guys have to see this. Headlines are, crazy.
Well, when Trump got elected, the market, I never forget when he got elected, they showed the market futures and they were acting like we're about to go into a recession. And then the opposite happened.
Yeah.
And then it went from that to Russia. It was
Stormy
Daniels, and then from Russia to that Ukraine, and then the impeachment, and now here we are.
Literally, the month the impeachment ended, this kicks up, and so that makes it really hard to I think that's one of the reasons for the social delay and trying to figure out what's actually happening right now.
Yeah, what's
the truth versus what is being said. So. That's why I've been trying to tell people to stop reading headlines because they're all. I mean, you can't get your information from a headline.
Well, the one where they said that the couple or the person had died taking hydrochloroquine. I don't want to mess that name up. Hydrochloroquine. Am I saying that right?
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah.
And they were like, he died from that. And I'm like, no, I don't believe it. And then he came out. It was fish clean. Yeah, fish clean. It was like I knew something was there. I knew it wasn't. I knew it was not what they were making it out to be.
Yeah, that's a perfect example. And another one is that the 17-year-old that just recently passed away. Mm-hmm. The big headline was first U.S. child dies from coronavirus. Mm-hmm. And so me and my wife initially were thinking oh man, a 5-year-old must have just died or something.
Yeah.
Well, it turns out the kid was 17, so he was a minor. But it also turned out he died from heart failure. Completely unrelated, and just happened to also test positive for coronavirus. Mm-hmm. But the headline is first child dies from coronavirus. Mm-hmm. And that's what you see everywhere. Now they're like, okay, the father actually came out and said, hey guys, he died from heart failure.
They didn't care.
Yeah, I don't know why they're trying to pin this as a coronavirus death. And I'm like, nah,
So you test positive for coronavirus, you get in a car accident, coronavirus killed you.
You're on the record. So I don't know, and that's one thing too. Is like there's so much data out there right now. And it's actually, I love the data side of it. It's really interesting, but there's not a complete picture of data yet. Like another recent one is U.S. tops the. We have the most cases of coronavirus now, and you see this huge spike in the graph. Well, that's because we just started testing a lot, and we were doing the most tests, I think, now per capita than any country. I think South Korea was ahead of us at first. So that's why you see that big spike, and it's actually, as that spike goes up, the death rate is decreasing, because it was awful in the beginning. You had those 22 people that died in Washington.
They hit the nursing home. Yeah.
The worst possible place for something like this to hit. So I mean, as the cases go up, we'll learn more information, which is good. So that the fact that we're testing a lot more is nice. We get to see what the actual data looks like, but we won't know actual data for a while, I don't think, like what the actual picture looks like. I mean, it'd be interesting to know how the seasonal flu, how that transpired into what it is today, like when it first was discovered. I don't know that information.
And we talked about that, how many the flu kills, and we have a vaccine for it.
Yeah, it's like 130,000, I think, globally right now.
This year.
With a vaccine.
With a vaccine.
They call it a season, so it's like, I guess, November through May. But yeah, so like the 2019-2020 season, it's at 130,000, I think, right now, with the vaccine.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's substantial. And that's where part of the data that people are looking at is they're saying, well, this is increasing so fast, which is true, but we're also just now testing. And I mean, this is just opinion. I think we'll find out that the virus is here a lot sooner than February 8th or whenever the first U.S. death.
Well, we have a mutual friend, Patrick, that seems to think that he got it in 2019.
Oh, yeah. I have several guys. There's a guy in my office, out of the office for a week.
He tested negative for the flu. He tested negative for strep, but they called it an upper respiratory infection, a severe upper respiratory infection.
Right.
And it was with him for 2 weeks, and then he was fine.
Yeah, there's a guy at my office, and actually my brother-in-law both had the same. They said that they had a fever and cough for almost 14 days straight, where they're at the hospital a couple times. They tested negative for strep, negative for flu, couldn't figure it out. The guy I worked with, his wife also got it also. And I remember he kept coming to work going, I have the strangest dry cough that I cannot get rid of.
Oh.
And this was months ago. And so when this all started happening, I was like, I don't want to say his name, but I was like, maybe you had that. And he was like, now that I think about it, man, it's the exact symptoms that they're talking about.
Yeah.
And I have a hard time believing that if you look at it, it's in I think 193 countries right now. Something like that doesn't spread in a month. I mean, I feel like that probably was going back to November when China first had their first case. But again, China's the other big X factor here.
And we talked about that, and that's kind of why I wanted to have Kevin on the show, because he's so engaged. Glenn Beck always talks about do your homework, and he does it. And he's not fun to argue with when you disagree with him, because he has his research. We had a fundamental disagreement about baseball being a second tier sport. I played baseball. It ain't a second tier sport, but he has points. So you're like, that's true. But that's why I wanted to have you on, because of how politically engaged you are, how objective you are, and it's all from a data standpoint.
Right.
And when we look at this with China, there was a survey that we talked about that I didn't know this, that over 90% of our pharmaceutical drugs are created over in China.
Yeah, I actually.
That's scary.
There's an organization that did a study and they were tasked at looking at what life-saving drugs come from China. Like if the person taking them doesn't have them in this certain span of time, they literally die. There's like 156 different ones that come from China and Mexico, and the majority of those come from China.
Wow.
And same with supplies too. I mean, a lot of people are they're freaking out about us not having tests available.
Yeah.
Well, the reason for that is because there's a drain in supplies. One, yes, we used a lot very quickly, but also the supply chain. A lot of that stuff comes from China. The swabs, the masks comes from China. So China, now we're kind of at their mercy of, it's a country we're not allied with. It's not. It's kind of a hostile nation in the world. And so here we are relying on them for critical supplies for masks, gloves, things of that nature. So if we don't learn anything after this situation, I really hope that we start to sever those ties with China.
Absolutely. And it doesn't matter how you feel about Trump. You have to agree that he was right about China.
Oh, yeah.
He was right to go to war with them with this trade. He was right to point out how they're a trade partner, but they're almost an adversary more than they are a partner.
Oh, they are, absolutely.
And so at some point we've got to look at them and go, we don't need to be doing as much business with them. We don't need to be creating more as all the goods that we create over there. I don't know how a company like Nike now goes, yeah, we should totally do business with them.
Yeah, let's stay in China. Yeah, and this is somewhat unrelated, but a few years back they had that microchip that they implanted into a bunch of motherboards, actually, that were used in government military computers. And Amazon, I think, is actually the company that discovered it. So we're buying all these motherboards and processing chips from China to put in these laptops and computers. And it turns out that they were hacking our systems through, we're already paying them money to buy their product. And at the same time, we're buying their ability to now get into our computers. You would think something like that would have been a giant red flag, but no, you're right. I mean, he's been, one of the things that you can consistently count on him to talk about is how China is taking advantage of the United States. So
exactly. And I don't know if a lot of people know this, they own a lot of our debt. I think they own the majority of our debt. And the $6 trillion that we just created out of thin air, it would not surprise me if they said, hey, can we buy some of that? And it's just another reason for us to have to look at them and go, we don't need to do as much business with them, especially, them owning our debt and them creating our products. And now wasn't there an ambassador, the Chinese ambassador, saying, well, maybe we don't need to be sending them antibiotics and we'll just be slow in sending them antibiotics.
I don't know. I haven't seen that. It's possible.
I think I've seen something, but this is not the time, for spatting. It's the time for us to work together. But once we figure this thing out, we have got to reevaluate our relationship with China.
No, I agree, and I would imagine that this would be a good cause for some debt relief.
Yes.
Money that we owe China right now.
Yes.
The fact that they withheld information from the world. A lot of people are pointing fingers at specific leaders. Prime Minister in Italy, President Trump in the United States, and all these countries. They didn't do their job. They didn't act fast enough. Well, they're all forgetting that China lied to WHO for a month and a half. WHO had the wrong data in the beginning. The United States and all the countries in the world were pretty much all in the same situation, going, well, what's happening? Is this happening? There's a little bit of intel on the ground that they had. But at the end of the day, you look at all the countries impacted by this, they were all behind, so to speak. And so you think, well, if every country was behind, maybe there's something more than just, there's not a single country prepared for this. So I think South Korea had probably the quickest response.
Yeah, they've done a real great job.
And I think some of that is they had a lot of those testing supplies on hand. They dealt with, I don't know if it was SARS. I think it was
SARS.
They dealt with in the past. So they had experience that's a little more closer to home for them. Also, they border North Korea. So I'm assuming, this is all assumption, that they had those additional tests and for the fact that they bordered a hostile nation and might, have been projecting some type of viral warfare at some point, but it's hard to tell.
It was interesting. I was reading last night, and I read on a study from Johns Hopkins that they rated America the most prepared for a pandemic.
Yeah.
And here we've been getting hit hard, saying we wasn't prepared, we wasn't this, we wasn't that, and they just came out and said that as of all the nations, we've been the most ready and prepared for the pandemic and been handling it the best.
Yeah, and so much of it is hindsight analysis. So I've been thinking about this a lot. Like, say your house burns down, and someone's been warning you, your house is going to burn down. And you're like, oh, okay. So you go check your electrical outlets, and you have a fire extinguisher in place, and you do these things. Well, then lightning strikes it, and they come back and goes, well, see, you should have put a lightning rod on your house to, there's always that hindsight analysis. And that's where we're at now. We have all this stuff in place, and they're going, oh, we don't have enough ICU beds. Well, we're working on it. I mean, you can't really plan for a pandemic. That's one of the reasons they call it a pandemic. Is it's a global crisis, or it's a crisis that happens that you have to react to it to some extent.
Well, they didn't take it seriously. What was the Health and Human Services executive for New York? She says, hey, it was in February. Everything's fine. You can ride the subways. You can do this. You can do that. I mean, there were people that just didn't take it seriously. I didn't take it seriously until, right. they issued that where you can only do takeout orders and everything like that. And I saw everybody in Winn-Dixie buying up everything, and the toilet paper was gone. Where on earth did the toilet paper thing come about?
It's panic, man. If you see 1 million people run past this house right now in the street, you're probably gonna go jump in line and run with them.
Exactly.
Get in your car, and I think that's what happened. So we got lucky. We have the Amazon fulfillment for toilet paper, and we had just gotten like a 2-month shipment in when they sent it in bulk when this happened. So we were good on toilet paper. We didn't have to go to the store for any.
It was 3 Fridays ago, and Bliss texted me and said, "Hey, the Walmart pickup, they're not doing that today. They've declined it." I said, "Okay, well, just text me the items, and I'll go get it." So I go to Winn-Dixie, and I pulled up, and I said, "This is an unusual crowd for a lunch crowd on a Friday. I wonder what's going on." So I get in there, and I see these people, with 2 buggies full. And I'm like, what is wrong with these people? And I'm judging them. I'm judging them. And by the time
just eating Chinese food.
and by the time I get done with that list, my buggy looked just like everybody else's buggy. Bliss, what are we doing here?
These people are dumb. And then you get that.
I know, and I get all stuff like, no. And I caught myself doing it. And the girls love the Juicy Juice and Yoo-Hoos, and I bought like 3 packs of those. I'm like,
yeah.
Now
this is what we're at now kind of makes sense, because now they're letting people in incrementally into these stores, so you're waiting in line to get into the store. So the people that made those big rushes might be going, that was smart to do that.
Yeah, Piggly Wiggly did something I think was cool. They limit 2 items of everything per customer now.
Yeah,
you can't go in there and just hoard stuff.
They're doing that with guns and ammo now too. I mean, there's been a huge run on that. Which is
shooters has just been crazy busy.
Yeah.
Every time I drive by, it's like full.
And I've gotten a lot of calls from a lot of people buying guns and asking gun questions for the first time. So as another kind of small silver lining, I think things like this really make people aware of their Second Amendment right, the importance of not always relying on the government. What happens if the police force shuts down because they're susceptible to the virus too, and emergency workers. And so it's kind of like, not to say to freak out, but use these times to realize, well, I should be at least a little prepared, first aid kits and stuff like that, to be able to sustain myself and my family. So I think it's kind of a good thing for people to recognize during this.
And I think for the most part, people have responded really well, especially in our community. They all take out. They've handled it well. It's hurting businesses, but they're doing the best they can. Countries has been phenomenal.
Yeah, we got taken out from Mark's last night.
Oh man, I love that place.
Yeah,
I love it. Now, did they have it set up like Country where you drive up and they just bring it out to you and you pay? And
yes, they asked what our vehicle was when we ordered, and so we pulled up, and literally like 30 seconds later they walked out the door with our food.
Yeah.
So, and I think I don't know what church it was, but there's a local church that opened their church up to let other pastors come in and record their services. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, I don't know if it was Cascade or I don't remember the name of the church, but they basically put a PSA out there. Pastors can come in if they don't have the ability to record their service there, and then had it ready to stream for Sunday. So I thought that was pretty neat.
Dude, we were talking about silver linings. I also think, I put it on Facebook last night, that this quarantine and this virus has made 3 places famous again for social hanging out, social networking, and that's the gas station, the grocery store, and the park.
Yep. Yeah.
In all 3 of them, I found myself starting conversations with people. I normally wouldn't do that.
Right.
But now I'm finding myself doing that, and I'm like, I remember when I used to do this when I was a kid. Now I'm doing this as a 40-year-old.
Yeah, go down to the gas station and buy your candy. Yeah, that's funny.
I saw this 20-year-old. He had a pair of Jordans on. I love Jordans, and they were low cut, the 11s low cut. And I'm like, where'd you get those? And he looked at me. He's like, dude, aren't you a little old to be? I'm like, yeah, but I love them. And we just started talking. And I thought about that. I was like, I normally would never do that, but now when you're away from human contact and you're away from that contact and you get into contact with people, you're like, you just want to have a conversation and engage with them.
Yeah, and I got a couple buddies that like they're not married, they don't have kids, they kind of live on their own, and I'll get on the phone for a couple seconds to ask some questions. You actually know one of them, I'll tell you afterwards.
All right.
And it'll turn into like a 45-minute conversation.
Yeah.
Which is cool, you know. I mean, I completely understand it. Like you're isolated from people all day, and then like we really do have that need for the human contact and conversation. So interesting. Super introverts are they're loving this right now. To hide in my closet and eat sunscreen all day.
I'm a little bit of both. I'm an extrovert in some situations, and I'm an introvert in some situations. But this is bringing out more of the introvert in me. There was a family that that were walking by our house in our little community. We have tons of people that are walking and stuff now, and this little girl just kept looking at Madison and Callie riding in that Minnie Mouse car that they have, and she was envious. Yeah. And I said, well, when this is all over, sweetheart, you can come over and you can ride that thing as much as you want to. And I said, wait, who am I? I would never say that. But that came out of me, and I meant it. And I was like, yeah, when this is over, you can come on over. It's amazing when something is taken from you. Something as so simple as human socializing is taken from you. You take it for granted, and you want more of it. And you're like, man, I didn't realize how much of this, I actually loved and loved doing.
Yeah, there's already a lot of companies planning like huge parties when this ends. Like they're like, when this ends, we're throwing the biggest party we've ever had. Yeah. So I think that's pretty neat.
And we talked about just spending time with the kids. I've spent more time with my kids outside than I ever have before.
Yeah, I saw something the other day. It was pretty neat. They're talking about the perspectives on the coronavirus, like years from now. And they're asking people our age, well, what was your experience? And you're like, oh, I run on groceries and work was closed down and people got fired. And then they like had this interview of a child. They're like, what was your experience? Like, oh, dude, I got to hang out with my family. Yeah. Like we skipped school for a month. We got up early. We played in the backyard all day. Like, gonna be two different perspectives on how that went. Parents are trying to pay the bills still, and the kids are like, carefree. But yeah, we've had some good times. My kids the other night set up the tent in the backyard, took some board games out there and a radio, and they were just like, they're having a blast. They're out there for a couple hours playing Battleship and Guess Who and all that. Reporting in, Dad, I just beat Levi, at Battleship.
I love it. I love it.
Awesome. So yeah, I mean, I feel like you have to take advantage. You have to, number one, find the silver lining in these situations. Yeah. Otherwise, you go insane. I mean, you go insane if you don't find something to do and find a way to kind of cope with it. And why not, take advantage and spend time with kids that you're not going to have.
Plus, if you just watch the news constantly, it'll drive you crazy.
It does. I'm guilty of that, man. It does.
They speculate so much. You see that. There was a doctor, and it upset me so bad. He was on Fox Business, and this person asked a question. It was a obvious, easy question. How does this virus compare to the flu as it relates to deaths? In other words, how many people died last year from the flu, and how many died from this? And he didn't answer it straight. He speculated. Yeah. He said he gave her the answer about how many people died last year from the flu, but he did not give the grand total from the coronavirus. Yeah. Which it is ever changing, and it could be a high number. You hope not, but he didn't give her the straight answer, and he went into what I would say was speculating. Right. And it almost was like he didn't want to let her off the hook and say, well, okay, compared to this, not that many people have died so far.
And that's fine. I mean, I think you can do both. You can give, that's one thing I have such a problem with is there's so much projection. Like all the news headlines. 80 million could end up dead. Yeah. I've seen that, or studies where they say, 2 billion might get infected. And you're looking at that going, oh my God, that's crazy. Well, let's take a few steps back and see where we're at now. Let's talk about the actual data and where we're at. And then also, that's fine if you want to include the speculation, but they focus so much on the hysteria part.
Exactly.
Because that gets the clicks and that gets people talking and gets people scared, and the media thrives on all of those things. And normal people don't.
And that's where the outside thing came for me and Bliss. I'm like, we're going to turn the TV off. We're going to go outside. We're going to hit the Bluetooth speaker. We're going to play some music. We're going to turn on get the jump house going, and we're just going to sit out here for a couple hours and just unplug. And I've loved it. I have loved it.
It's been good. It's been good.
So talking about the coronavirus, me and Bliss had a conversation at some point that you have to weigh what's going to be worse. And I want to get your opinion on this. As the longer that we go down this road, what's going to be worse? The economic disaster that this does to the economy and to homes, or the actual virus?
Yeah, the economy's getting hammered right now. So one of the when you bring this question up, one of the first things people go is, oh, you're comparing the economy to people's lives, people dying. And a lot of them don't realize people die when the economy gets bad.
Right.
For a variety of reasons, health-related reasons. I was telling you last night, they did this study after the 2008 financial collapse, and they tied over 10,000 suicides to the financial collapse.
I didn't know that.
People losing all of their money. I mean, there's some people. Think about the people right now that are in their retirement zone. They either just retired, or maybe in the next 4 or 5 years we're getting ready to retire, and they're watching their 401k demolished. I mean, they're watching it just bleed out. And so there's that factor that you have to consider. I mean, yes, no one's sitting here saying, oh, I think that $5 in my pocket is more important than something.
Yeah, I'm not saying that either. Yeah,
nobody's saying that. But you have to consider what the economic fallout is from something like this. It does turn into deaths also. Mm-hmm. Families destroyed, businesses destroyed, communities destroyed, and that can take years and years and years to recover from. And I mean, I think we've passed the tipping point, definitely, of recession. I mean, I don't see a situation where we don't hit recession at this point. Now they're talking depression levels, which, we haven't done that since the 20s. No one alive, very few people alive have experienced that right now. So,
yeah, and that goes back to the talking about families. This would not be a concern if you have studies out there showing that less than 70% of the people in our country have $1,000 in their savings.
Yeah, it's awful.
That will have a cumulative effect on people's lives.
Yeah, I think that's another wake-up call too. I mean, China being, I think, probably the most prominent wake-up call that I hope the world has, and the other being the financial stability, because in 2008 we got a little bit of a precursor of what this is like. Mm-hmm. And people hopefully should have taken that time to start saving and being financially responsible. And I saw that same study. It's very worrisome. The credit card debt's really high, I think.
Yeah, the average credit card debt is $7,000, and one of the reasons why people are having a hard time saving is, number one, they don't have a good idea of what they're spending. They don't sit down to do a budget. Number two, the rise in cost of healthcare. As wages have gone up, so has healthcare. Yeah. So for families, that's one reason why, even the families that do budget, what's hurting them is healthcare.
Yeah, no, I can see that.
Because it always goes up. I don't, the company I work for, we have Blue Cross Blue Shield, and every year, I love him, but he comes in and says it's up again. Yeah. Never comes down.
Right.
It's never. And so I'm on my wife's plan because she's a teacher, because the plan at my company is just too expensive. It's like
same.
Yeah. So I thank God she's a teacher.
Lucky enough to be in the reserve. The reserve.
You got great health care.
We still pay for it, but it's a fraction of. That's one of the reasons I'm still in, to be honest. I mean, the cost of it's more than a mortgage. Mm-hmm. Our health care, paying it, outside of the military TRICARE would be more than our mortgage right now.
Right.
It's crazy. Not even using it. We haven't. Can't remember the last time we had an emergency service or something that we had to use a doctor for.
And I think that's the side that people don't want to talk about. And they, friends that I have on Facebook, that they get upset about it. It's like, well, this is a reality.
Yeah.
If they lose their job and they can't pay for their health care, and they get sick and they have no health care, they're in the same boat that they're in here with the coronavirus, getting sick, but at least here they'd have health care with the coronavirus if they were working still.
Yeah.
So that has to, I'm glad I'm not the president, because that is going to be one of the toughest decisions that he makes. And one of the things that I know is going to happen when he puts us all back to work, every time somebody dies, the media is going to sound the alarm.
Every case. Yeah.
And they're going to, and I hate to say this because it's terrible when someone dies, but the media is going to exacerbate it.
Yeah, and you could make an easy case that the media could take and again, I'm not comparing flu to coronavirus side by side, but you could take flu data and have the same level of scare. If we had a counter that showed
Exactly.
every day, I mean, where is that counter at actually? I want to go try to find it, because there's several of them out for coronavirus. Worldometers, who I've been like following every day. They have like the global deaths, they break it down by country. So every day I log in, I'm like, oh, okay, I think we're up to like 610,000 known cases right now, and 24,000 deaths, which if you're just looking at those numbers and not any of the reasons behind them, it's way below the flu. So where's the flu counter at doing the same thing? And the media could, if they wanted to, they could take the flu data, put a counter up, and every time someone died from the flu, we heard about it, we'd be doing the same thing.
Exactly.
Toilet paper and groceries. And so yeah, I think the media has been pretty irresponsible in this with the hysteria. There's enough hysteria already.
Exactly. It's been awful this year. It's been awful because it's a campaign year. And then you had the impeachment hearings, and then Kobe died. That stopped the world. The world. And then this has done the same thing. But man, that one hit me. 2020 has sucked. So
Yeah, I
hard.
saw someone had like a 2020 receipt that said they wanted their money back.
I do too. I do too, man. I wish we had the time stone.
Yeah. Oh man, that's actually what you were saying is another good point. Is things compounding, and this would be a terrible time for any other small thing to happen.
Exactly.
Whether it's personally or on a national scale. I mean, if you're in this situation now and you end up in some other medical, emergency, or imagine your house burning down in a time like this, or any type of smaller thing on a scale that we're looking global to personal, just compounds on what people would have to deal with right now. Imagine a terrorist attack
Exactly.
in the middle of this. I mean, it would.
Well, that's the other thing. The turn of the year, we're going to World War III. They had the attack in Iraq. World War III. Here we go. And it's like I feel like since the turn, maybe they gave us a couple of days, but since the turn of the new year, we have not had a break. Everything has been freaking out, and everything is World War III, the impeachment, Kobe. That one just hit me.
It wasn't freaking out. It was still doing awesome. Was the economy?
The economy was doing great.
In the midst of all that,
the
economy was booming, and then this was like that one.
But it just feels like you haven't had to have a break. You can't blame the media for Kobe. That was a horrific accident.
Right.
But it just compounded into what you were already dealing with and reading about, and you're just like, now this happens. It's like, man, can we have a break? Can we just live? What do you think as a Christian and as a military man, what do you think God is saying in all this? What has God been saying to you? How has this affected your faith? How has this challenged your faith? How has this?
I think anytime something like this happens, one of the first things that I always try to remember is it brings people back to like what's actually important.
Yeah, what matters.
So like even with people losing jobs, and there's a lot of, it's going to get worse too, unfortunately. I mean, they're talking, they're possibly 30% unemployment, which again is one of those scare headlines, but that's one of the possibilities. So when something like this always happens, you have to go back to what's important, your faith, your family, your friends, and then you have to focus on those things you can control to work on, and then the things you can't control, you have to turn over to God. I mean, this is that time where your faith is tested, and I think when something like this happens, you either grow in it and you become a stronger person. That's everything: faith, financially, your personal life, your marriage, or it impacts you the opposite way, and your faith decays. And that's one of the reasons I would say it's still really good to stay in contact with people who are like-minded and still have those conversations, because that keeps that kind of built and knitted together when you're times are confusing and what's going to happen next, what's going to happen 6 months from now. So I think it does, it's good that it helps refocus. It's similar to when somebody dies that you're really close to. You have kind of that, that kind of reawakening of how important life is and that it's fragile, and you kind of, everyone wants to go hug their child. You see a headline that a child dies, and you're like, oh, I want to go hug my child.
Yeah, I know. Oh.
And so I think it's, it's similar to that. It's on a global scale now. I mean, we're all in this, all in this together. It's not like it's a small, group of people dealing with this. So yeah, I think you focus on the things that are actually important in life, and you use this time to rebuild things that maybe you need to work on. And then it's time to really show where your faith is at. I mean, if you're struggling, then this is maybe a time to reconnect with people that might be able to help rebuild certain things, certain aspects of your faith.
Absolutely.
What do you think about it?
I was immediately reminded of the book of Exodus. When Pharaoh was having the dream that caused him distress, and he wanted someone to interpret the dream, and he found Joseph, and or rather Joseph was brought to him, and he interpreted the dream, and he said, you're going to have 7 years of plenty and then 7 years of famine. So in the 7 years of plenty, you store up, so you're prepared for the 7 years of famine. And what I'm always reminded by going through this is that God has always warned his people that times like this are going to happen. And that you have to prepare. And he did it in the Old Testament, and he certainly did it in the New Testament. And he told us in the book of Revelation that there were going to be times of famine, pestilence, there were going to be times of rumors of wars and famine and death and plagues and all these things. So he's warned us for this. So the last thing we need to be is scared. We need to take heart that God warned us. And so if someone warns us of something, we have to be prepared. Perfect example, at my house, we have one really old air conditioner, and we have a air conditioner that ain't old, but it's getting there. So I've got home warranty on both those bad boys, because last year both of them went out, and when mama gets hot, she gets upset. When she gets upset,
I'm the same way.
You're calling everybody in Jesus, come fix this thing so she'll be happy again. So I extended the home warranty on that. So if it does happen this year, we can replace it, and it won't cost us that much money. I think the same thing is true with the church. We have to be prepared for these things because Jesus told us that this was going to happen. And so we have to be prepared spiritually. We have to be prepared financially. Not just from the standpoint of taking care of our families, but there are brothers and sisters who are pastors of small churches that are begging their church members, please tithe. Yeah. Please, I know that we can't come through, but please tithe. And I've had one of them reach out to me and say, I need your help. They're not tithing, and I'm in a little old church in South Columbus, and I need your help. Yeah. So this is a time for the church to flex its muscles, and this is the time for Christians to grow. And we don't grow in comfort. None of us do. No. We grow through challenge, we grow through crisis, we grow through conflict, we grow through challenge. And this is a great opportunity, to grow. Yeah, and to say, God, how can I be used? How can you most effectively use me? And, I'm at that point because, I'm a lot like, I'm a saver. I save so much. So financially, you talked about, you guys, if something happens, you're 6 months in, prepared until you have to dip into, your retirement. And I'm kind of in the same situation. But I think that's what I'm reminded of, is that we can't be surprised. God warned us. Yeah. And we have to be prepared. And so what I hope happens is that when we go back to church, that going to the altar should not be that cumbersome. When I was at Morningside Baptist, there were times that people didn't go to the altar, and I went to the altar, and I would say to the Lord as I was walking down the aisle, if nobody else will go, God, I'll go. Yeah. And this was before Callie got sick. This is before Bliss was pregnant. It was just something that was in me. So when Callie got sick, the altar became the place where I did battle. Mm. And the reason why she's alive and well today is because Daddy and Mommy went to the altar and prayed her through.
I'll never forget those fighting days, man.
But we should always be doing that. And I think that The altar should not be a place. There was one time I went to the altar and the guy shook my hand and says, "Welcome to the family, brother. Glad you got saved." Well, is that all the altar means to you, is a place of salvation? Because it ain't to me. So I think for the church, we've got to be more prepared. We got to be vigilant. And when this is over, we got to be able to come together as a community and pray, and not look at the altar as a place where bad people go and damaged people go and hurting people go, but people that just want to get in the face of God and say, "I need more of you," or "this person in my life that I know needs more of you." So that's what I think, that's what I feel, and that's what I believe, that one, God warned us about this, told us it was going to happen. Two, we got to be more prepared for times like this. And three, this has got to bring out the best in us, which is why I talked to Jaron about doing this and doing a podcast, because there's nothing out there right now for people to escape from.
Right.
So hopefully this will help do that.
It is easy too in this time to move all of the focus inward on you, like when especially when everybody's going through a similar thing. Oh my goodness, this is so bad. What are we gonna do? And it can be distracting to say, well, you might be in a better position than somebody else. What can you do for them right now?
Yeah.
And so that is something that maybe people should consider. And you're seeing a lot of people step up. I mean,
Absolutely.
There's celebrities stepping up, people locally, like that church just letting people come to their facility. People donating meals to emergency workers. I've seen that. There's even on the public or private sector side, you have companies like Harbor Freight just donated, I think it's Harbor Freight, their entire inventory of masks that they had on hand. They donated it to emergency services and hospitals. So I think those are good stories that we should be hearing about. They're uplifting. It shows like the true American spirit.
Absolutely.
That's happening around the world too. But I think more of that, should happen. But we should also be talking about those things a little more, except for just another person died. We know people are dying. People are getting sick. What's the good in this situation that we can talk about?
Absolutely. And speaking of good, I wanted to end the show with a little bit of perspective, if that's okay. I read a story, and as soon as I read it, it touched me, and it's about perspective. And if you guys don't mind, I'd like to share it because it's all about perspective in life. Life's about perspective, and there are people suffering, and there are people going through things. And I think what's important is what can you do? Well, there is a man by the name of Andrew McGinley. He lives in Dublin. And his wife and their 3 children his 3 children are dead. His wife murdered them.
Holy smokes.
Killed them. And he's in quarantine right now and has nobody. Has nobody to reach out to.
Wow.
Nobody to call. His kids are dead because his wife murdered them. And she's in jail. And all he's asking is that someone will write him a letter.
Interesting.
And say, "You're not in this alone. We're with you. We're praying for you."
What's the name again?
His name is Andrew McGinley. What I'll do is when we post this online, I put it on my Facebook page, I'll actually post this article on the comment section. I'll also put it on the YouTube page. And if you want to write him a letter at the end of the article, it actually posts his address and asking for people to reach out to him and write him a letter. And what a great way to be able to reach out to somebody, even if you're an introvert it's introvert. Yeah, if you're an introvert and you don't, that's not your thing. Well, here's an opportunity to write someone a letter and just say, "I'm praying for you."
Yeah, easy. It's easy.
Yes.
There's no excuse not to do that.
Exactly. And
we have time too.
Exactly.
We got 50 cents.
So please, it's all about perspective. It's all about being able to reach out to people in need. And I'm sure there are people in our community that are in need, and we would love to help them. But with all the free time you have, write Andrew a letter and tell him that God's going to see him through it. God's going to be with him, and God will see him through this season in his life, and God will bless him, and that God will see him through this. And just want to say thank you for joining us. Hopefully this was something that was engaging and entertaining. And Kevin, I want to thank you and appreciate it, man. This was awesome.
Man.
Yes. So you guys, make the most of your quarantine, make the most of your day, and God bless you.